Hello everybody, my name is Michael, and in today's video what we're going to be doing is this right here. So if that looks exciting to you guys, please carry on and watch the video. Oh, and just one more thing before we go. Please consider like, commenting, and subscribing if you enjoyed the video. But now with all that out of the way, let's carry on with the video. Okay, so starting off with our pirate here, what we're going to be doing is we're going to start off with some tan flesh. And I'm going to choose tan flesh because he's, working out in the sun on the ships most of the time. He's got no shirt on, so his skin is naturally going to get tanned. So tan flesh is going to be a good starting for this, and making sure that we're thin down our paint just a little with a little drop of water so we can get it nice and thin. Now we'll leave some streak marks since there is some big smooth areas on this, but that's while we thin our paint down so we can come in with a second lot of paint and really tidy those streak marks up. It's amazing how much of a difference when you add on that second layer of paint when you keep it thin, how much it cleans up all those streak marks. And of course these wizkids models are already pre-primed, so we don't even have to prime them. We can just get straight into painting. So once we have his skin all painted up, what I'm going to do is come in with some charred brown now. I'm going to be using the charred brown to be painting up his boots. I want to give him some nice dark leather boots to contrast a lot with all that bright skin, and I feel having that nice dark leather is going to help out with that, especially since I want to try and put him on a beach scene, so he's going to have a very light basing. So going with some dark boots will help really stand him out from the base that he'll be standing on at the end. So of course we just want to make sure we're doing the same thing, keeping our paints nice and thin down and making sure we go over in two coats. Okay, so now what we're going to be doing is we're going to come in with some ultramarine blue now, and we're going to be using this to be painting up his pants. So just a nice blue color to add in there. So now it does have some stripes carved into it, so don't be afraid if you want to switch out the colors, maybe blue and white and whatever colors you sort of feel like if you want to go with those striping patterns. I'm not going to worry about the striping patterns at the moment. I think putting in a wash there is really going to define them out, and I just want to have some nice blue pants. Okay, so once we have his pants painted up, what I'm going to do now is come in with some khaki, and I'm going to be using khaki to be painting up the belt and his shoulder armor that he has on him here as well. So again, we just want to be careful that we not getting onto that skin, but we don't have to worry about that too much because we are still in the base coating stage, so it's not too hard to clean up because we've only used a few colors at this stage, so it's nice and easy to clean up if we get any mistakes, especially since we're doing belts and armor pieces like that. So just be aware of that if you do, it's not too big a deal to fix up, but again, we want to make sure we give them all a nice coating all the same. Okay, now we have that belt and his armor piece done up. What I'm going to do now is come in with some fur brown. And for the fur brown, what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be using it just to be painting up these little bits of leather working hairs tied to his belt that he has on. Now, his belt's actually a rope, so we'll pick that out in a different color later on. But I want these nice bits of leather work coming in with the fur brown, since it's a orangey reddish brown, and it's going to help stick out amongst all the other browns we've used on here. But don't be afraid to use any of the other browns that we've already used if you don't have a brown like this. But it's just to help stick out on the miniature. Okay, now we have those little bits of leather done. We're going to come in now with some necromancer cloak. And the necromancer cloak I'm going to be using to be painting our pirate's gloves up here. Just a nice dark color to help bounce off all the other colors we've got here. And we just want to, again, make sure that we're getting into the little cracks and crevices, because his gloves have a little bit of detail on here. And you can see I've changed to a slightly thinner brush so I can get in between the fingers in there. There's going to always be a little bit of a problem missing a little bit of paint in those fingers, so don't forget about that. And as well, we want to do his other hand, which is gripping the sword, so being careful and making sure that we really pick out the glove in the right way. Okay, so now we have his gloves picked out, it's time for us to move on with some hemp rope. And hemp rope, not surprisingly, going to be using this for the rope that's holding up his pants. It is very sort of strange yellowy greenish color, so it is going to help pop out a little bit as well on the miniature, because it's very different from all the other colors we've used so far. So hemp rope is going to be a good option, and hemp rope for a hemp rope belt I think is fitting. So again, just going around being very careful not to get it on anything else that we've already painted over so far, but it's not too much of a worry since hemp rope is a lighter color, so you can quickly fix up any mistakes we have pretty quickly with it. Okay, so now with his belt all base coated up, we're going to move on with a mixture of colours here. So I've got dragon red, lava orange, and cavalry brown. But you can mix a variety of colours that you want. I'm giving our pirate here a nice reddish brown beard. So you may want to go with a black beard or something like that. I'm going to go with this red beard. It's going to help pop out, as you can see here, that we're applying it. It's giving this real bright, vibrant pop. But I've also mixed it down with the browns and the reds to give it a little bit more interest and make it a little bit more natural than if I was to just paint it straight over with a red or an orange color. So that's why I've mixed those colors there. They're in a roughly equal amount, but it's really up to you how much you want to mix it, whether you want it to be more brown or more orange. Okay, so once we've painted up as here, I'm going to come in now with some tinny tin. And I'm going to be using the tinny tin to be painting up this little flask bottle that he has on the side of him here. I'm guessing it's probably full of rum, knowing pirates. So we want to make sure we get that there. I want it to be a nice metal drinking container. Now, of course, you could change it to leather or whatever you want here, but I want something a little bit different, have a little bit of metallic in there. And we want to be very careful since there is just a little bit poking out through the wrappings that it is held onto his belt with. So using a small brush, I'm trying to get in there, try to get as much detail as I can. Okay, now with his flask painted up, we're going to come in now with some ivory. And for the ivory, I'm going to be using this just to be picking out just a little bit of detailing he has on his shoulder pad he's got here. He's sort of got some tassels and rope hanging around there. That's basically what I'm going to be painting them up there, is their little rope tassels and knot work, since he's on a ship all the time, so he's probably got a bit of time to spend making himself look a little bit fancy with the stuff he has around him. So I'm guessing it's some rope, so I'm going to make it some nice sort of ornate, sort of fancy rope that he's made little tassels and stuff with. So the ivory is going to be good for this, and it's going to help give another color to the piece and help really make it stand out on that shoulder piece. Okay, so once we've got all that done, what we're going to do now is come in with some brassy brass, and I'm only going to be using this on one small piece of the miniature, and I'm just going to be using it for the handle of our cutlass he's got here. So go with a nice brassy brass to change up the coloring from it being all just one plain metal. So I think brassy brass is going to help that out. Still a nice metallic color, and it's going to give a bit of interest to the piece as well. Okay, so now we're going to be coming in with that metal color that I was talking about just before. So gunmetal is going to be a nice option for this. And of course, we want to be painting up the blade of that cutlass. As well as that, he also has a dagger and a short sword on him as well. So I'm going to be painting those up with the gunmetal color as well, because we want to have all our metal cohesive. And of course, don't forget about the nice big belt he has on him as well. We want to get that nice big belt buckle that he's got on there as well. We want to make sure we get that in this. Now, you could do this in the gunmetal just like I am here, but you may also want to go with the gold, make them a little bit more flashy. But I'm just going to keep it all sort of cohesive and even, so I'm using the gunmetal here. Okay, so with that all done, we have all finished with our base coats, and time to start moving on to the washes. So using agrax earthshade here, and what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be applying this to quite a majority of this miniature. So I'm also going to be applying this to his skin, his clothing. The only places we're avoiding is anywhere that we have any metallics, and his hair, because we're going to be using different washes for those. But the reason why I've gone with agrax earthshade for the skin is I want him to have a darker skin tone, and he's sort of a dirty scoundrel of a pirate, so I think the agrax earthshade is going to help emphasize that a lot more, especially since he's out in the sun on the ship all the time, beating down. It sort of tans up your flesh quite a lot, so I think agrax earthshade is going to be a great help to give him that darker sun-burnt skin and make him look like he is a hard, fierce-working pirate a little bit more than if we were to just use flesh wash. But speaking of flesh wash, we also want to use flesh wash now once that's completely dry, and I'm going to be using this just on the hair of our pirate. Now, the reason why I've gone with flesh wash here is because it's a brown reddish wash, and it's going to really help emphasize all that facial hair and hair that we have on our pirate. Now, you could go with a red wash here to emphasize the red a bit more, or you could just go all over with the agrax earthshade to emphasize the brown a bit more, but this is a good in between. Okay, so once that wash is completely dry, it's time to move on to the metallics, and nuln oil, of course, is my no-brainer option for any metallics. I just love the way it looks on, especially silver metallics. I love the way it darkens everything down and gives that realistic, worn metal appearance. And as well as that, we're also going to be using it on the handle of our sword as well. So, of course, don't forget about the little daggers that he has on his sides as well, and the little armor piece on his arm too. Okay, so once that's all completely dry, we can move on with some highlights. So starting off with ivory now, and all we're going to be doing is touching up on those high points of all that nice rope working that he has on his shoulder pad there. And you see I'm just picking out just the very highest points, not painting over the whole thing, just picking out certain spots. And just going around the miniature very, very carefully, because we want to try and not mess this up as much as we can. Okay, so with all that little detailing picked out, it's time to move back on with the hair. So again, using our mix from before, you might want to add in a little bit more lighter colors to this, and maybe a bit more of the orange in here to add a bit more of that highlighting effect. And you can see I'm just very carefully going over with a very fine tip brush, and only really lightly streaking it across to try and pick out those hairs. Now, it does have some nice hair sculpted into it. I'm still working on my finesse when it comes to that, to picking out those areas, but I'm just very gently trying to pick out as many as I can. And then once we've done that, we're going to come back in with some hemp rope now, and we're going to be picking out, of course, the rope that's holding up his belt. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be more dotting it along rather than having big sweeping motions, so we can have that rope effect. Since there is a little bit of twisting and stuff, you can see how that rope sculpted in. So dotting it along is going to give it a little bit more of a nicer effect than if we just go straight. Then once we have that rope picked out, we're going to move it back on with some khaki. And of course, we want to be giving some highlights there. We applied the khaki before, which is his leather belt and his shoulder pad. So going carefully just around the edges with a nice fine tip brush, like you can see me doing here. Being very, very careful now to not try and get it on the skin. You can see I'm very lightly pulling it across, giving a sort of a roughish texture. I'm not being smooth with it. Don't really have the brush control, but I think it looks a little bit better having a little bit of rough areas where it looks like the light is naturally catching it as well, especially on leather parts of a miniature. Okay, so now what we're going to be doing is we're going to highlight some metallics, and using shining silver for this is going to be a nice bright highlight to have onto these things, like it's really out in the sun, giving off a nice gleaming effect. And we just want to run it just up the middle of this blade here, which it nicely has it sort of tapered up towards this point, so that's a nice easy spot to run your tip of your brush along and really catch those edges. And of course you just want to catch the little bits of edges onto those other pieces as well. Okay, so now we're on our final highlight, and for our final highlight we're going to be doing his skin, and that of course is going back to tan flesh. Now I'm only going to be placing it on the highest points of his miniature, so like the tip of his nose, edge of his brow, top of his head here. So just everywhere where the sun would naturally hit, and I'm being very, very thin with this because I don't want it to paint over the whole entire area again and lose a lot of that brown wash, because I still want him to be a dirty scoundrel of a pirate. We want to keep the effect of that wash on there. And then once you've done that, you can base up the miniature however you like. And with all that complete, we have now finished painting up our pirate from the Deep Cuts WizKids line. And I hope we've succeeded in giving him that dirty scoundrel pirate look and making him look like he's been out on the sea for a long time and he's getting ready to come and get you. So I hope this has been helpful for you guys, whether you like to follow along or you just enjoy me painting up some cool miniatures. And once again, thank you all for watching, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next video.